Friends, at this time we are going to begin the funeral services for Merle A. Friedman. If you have a cell phone or a pager, I would ask for you to please take a moment to turn it off or place it in the silent mode. Thank you.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בינות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות, על מי מנוחות, ינעלני. נפשי ישובב ישובב, ינחני ומגלי צדק, ינחני ומגלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני, לפני, שולחן נגד צוררי. דשנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני, כל ימי חיי, כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, אדוני רואי לא אחסר.
Hassan Sandler beautifully chanted Psalm 23 in memory of Merle Friedman. If you'd like to join me, I'm now going to recite it in English. It's in your service folder, and you can read it with me. It's on the inside cover. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now I'm going to call on Rabbi Friedman to recite a psalm in her memory.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני, מי יגור באוהליך, מי ישכון בהר קודשך, הולך תמים ופועל צדק, ודובר אמת בלבבו. לא בגל על לשונו, לא עשה רע, וכפר לא נשא על קברו. נמצא בעיניו נמאס, פתאום לא יכבד, נשבע להבה ולא ימיר, כספו לא נתן בנשך, ושוחד ענקי לא לקח. עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם. A Psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere the Lord. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own. Then shall you stand firm forever. Amen.
Great scholar Ben Sira wrote something very beautiful about death, and followed also by Dr. Hillel Bavli, and I want to share their words. We are all destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Cry for the dead. Hide not your grief. Do not restrain your mourning. But also remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory be a source of peace, and be consoled when the soul departs. This is my prayer to you, my God, that not my spirit wither and shrivel in its thirst for you, and lose the dew with which you sprinkled when I was young. May my heart be open to every broken soul, to orphan life, to every stumbler wandering unknown and groping in the shadow. Bless my eyes, purify me to see humanity's beauty rise in the world, and the glory of my people in its redeemed land, spreading its fragrance over all the earth. Deepen and broaden my senses to absorb a fresh, green, flowering world, to take from it the secret of blossoming in silence. Grant strength to yield the fine fruits, quintessence of my life, steeped in my very being without expectation of reward. And when my time does come, let me slip into the night, demanding nothing, O God, of humanity or of you. I'm now going to ask Marla, one of her daughters, to share some words about her mom.
You know how when you go to funerals of people you don't know, you listen to their eulogies and leave wishing that you actually knew that person or were actually friends with them. My mom didn't have a lot of friends or family, although I know many of you are here today, which is great. So not many people knew her, but I hope that when you leave today, you wish that you could have known her. In fact, sometimes I wish I even knew her better. My mom was complicated and someone with whom it was hard to have a relationship. But she had so much to offer, and she couldn't get out of her own way to see nor accept the love around her, including from me. That made for a difficult and sometimes lonely life. I've been so comforted, though, by hearing from people who have only had positive memories of my mom. She was charming, a good conversationalist, and she knew so much. She was definitely a source of knowledge, and I loved hearing her talk about her memories of her family tree and of her growing up. Momo, it's a childhood nickname that stuck, and it's what her grandkids call her. Struggled a lot, particularly over the past 5 years. In many ways, I feel like we've been actively mourning her for years. But in thinking about her these past couple days, I'm comforted by all of my great memories of her floating to the top, such that I feel the presence of my real mom with me instead of the declining one of the past 5 years. Reflecting on my relationship with her, I was able to better enjoy all my mom had to offer. So in an attempt to have you know her better, and for me to remember all the good my mom put out in the universe, I'm going to share some tidbits with you. Sorry. She'd often start our calls with, "Hiya, Marzi," and she'd always end our calls with, "See you later, alligator." My mom used to call herself Dr. Flach. I wasn't really sure what that meant, but I thought it was a sarcastic, I know it all, but I don't know anything. She used this term for herself every time I asked her something medical, which was often. I'd say, "Mom, why is this red? Mom, why does this hurt? Mom, should I worry about this?" And she'd say, "Oh, you're asking Dr. Flach?" But she'd reluctantly answer, and she was always right. She loved the Chicago Bears. I remember her teaching me football when I was young, and we were able to share the excitement of the '85 Bears together. In fact, a few days ago, she asked me if there was a Bears game on. My mom earned her master's in social work when my sister and I were young. She'd practice on us all the time. How did we know she was practicing? We'd say anything, and she'd say, "How does that make you feel?" In fact, the other day, she opened her eyes as if she was answering someone, and she just said, "I'm 80, and I was a social worker." And I said, I know, Mom, you were a good social worker. And she said, how do you know? And I said, because you social worked me all the time. She was there for me when I had a problem or was anxious about something. She'd work her social work magic on me without me realizing it, and I'd feel better. Sometimes she'd talk to me until I fell asleep. We sometimes called our mom slow-mo for a reason. One of the reasons is that she'd eat so slowly. The food would come, and she'd start her preparations of getting her food ready for consumption. She'd prepare a baked potato such that every speck was equally covered in butter. She'd carefully stack a burger with tomato and lettuce, and then cut it in half, and on and on. We'd all be done eating, and by the time she prepared her food just the way she wanted, we'd all be done, and we'd have to wait and watch her finish. One of her love languages was food. Making people happy with food made her happy. She wanted everyone to have enough of whatever they wanted, whether we were choosing a restaurant or cooking at home. And if there's just enough, there's not enough. So now I cook for at least 10 extra people than the amount I'm actually feeding, because you never know. Terry remembers that she'd often say that there was always room for dessert because you had a separate stomach for that. She was big on traditions. I can trace many of my preferences or behaviors back to my childhood because of the way my mom did things. One of our traditions was going to the Nutcracker each year and then to Lowry's, and I was able to pass on the love of Lowry's to my family. Or we'd go to shows in the city, always preceded by dinner, usually at Pettorino's. Other traditions were her holiday menus. We'd have the same meal for every holiday. I think the only acceptable variance was Hanukkah, where she'd let us choose among cold cuts, meatloaf, or skirt steak. But that's the only choice we had. Recently, I wondered why there's so many holiday cookbooks, because doesn't everyone cook the same meal every year? Why would anyone need a cookbook? And she'd get aggravated when my sister would try to introduce a new recipe. Ask me later and I'll tell you what the menu was for any holiday. She had particular but excellent taste, especially when it came to decorating, her clothes, party planning, gift giving. I frequently wonder how someone with so little self-confidence could have so much confidence to advocate for herself to get what she wanted, believing that they were the right choices. And they were. She threw beautiful sukkah parties. She loved stringing the popcorn and cranberries, great birthday parties when we were little, and she gave us both beautiful weddings. And everyone always had a great time. In thinking about saying farewell to Momo, I realized why some ancient civilizations bury their dead with objects believed to be needed in the afterlife. I told my sister that I wish we could send off Momo with things she needed and would appreciate in the afterlife. But we agreed this was not in keeping with Jewish tradition, but in that spirit, I thought I would just share with you some things that I would love for Momo to have for all eternity. Her red felt tip markers for crossword puzzles, mysteries to read and Shakespeare to read, her signature mug filled with a ton of ice and a little ginger ale in a straw, a TV so she could watch The Bears or Dateline or anything on PBS like Upstairs, Downstairs or Mary Hartman. 8 tracks of Helen Reddy, John Denver, Johnny Cash, or any of her favorite musicals. A bottle of water for her purse, along with Shmoo, which is hand sanitizer, a back scratcher, and her watch. Before I close, I just want to take a moment to thank Momo's caregivers, Jenadina, Genevieve, and Ashila. You took such loving and good care of our mom, so much so that she outlived every prediction, and you enabled me and my sister to have some sense of normalcy without having to worry about her. My mom did the best she could. She had physical and psychological limitations, but she was an intentional parent. My sister and I became self-sufficient, and we've internalized so much of the good she had to offer. Rest easy, Mom. I miss you. I love you. See you later, alligator.
Emily, one of her grandchildren, is now going to say some words.
Ooh, there's a lot of you. That's amazing. Oh my gosh, it's so great to have you all here. As my mom said, Momo didn't really have many people active in her life, so to see you all here for her and for us is just, it's incredible. That was beautiful. Mom, I forgot about the Johnny Cash thing. I totally got that from her. I'm obsessed, and that was such an amazing thing we had. So 2 nights ago, my family and I were all sitting on the couch, and they were trying to pick a movie, and I was in the middle of writing something and was totally locked into my computer. And I looked up 10 minutes later, and they, out of the thousands of options available on demand, they had chosen Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. And my jaw dropped because Momo took me to see that movie nearly 20 years ago. And if you haven't seen it, it's a classic, offensive Will Ferrell movie, completely unsuitable for 12-year-olds. But we spent the whole ride home quoting it. Shake and bake, baby. Thanks, Momo, for reminding me that even though you're not here to laugh with me, your sense of humor is still all around me. I did not speak to Momo in the last few months of her life. I had already mourned the spunky, foul-mouthed, politically inclined, loving grandmother who I had known for nearly 30 years. But before that, there had been this period where I had called her every day. I had found this spiritual awakening within me that allowed me to realize how much intergenerational trauma was present in our lineage. From Momsie's upbringing in poverty, Momsie being her mother, to Momo's difficult childhood, to a marriage at 19, in which she subsequently dropped out of college, siphoning off chances for independence and career success. I put myself in her shoes and felt the pain of lost opportunity, the burn of self-hatred, and the isolation that results from anger and hostility. I felt so much for her, sitting alone for hours on end in her bed, perhaps reliving the unsatisfactory moments in her life, which by her account were many. The last time we spoke, she lamented how little love she had felt in her life. But in the hours after she passed, and I was so grateful to be there when she did, I began sifting through the boxes in her home, one she likely hadn't touched for decades. And I found a letter from her father to her in 1961, the year she started at Washington University in St. Louis. Here are a few sections of that letter. Dear Merle, our holiday was not the same with you gone to college. Our home seems very empty without you, and I sincerely miss you very much. Believe it or not, I even miss Richard, her boyfriend at the time. He then goes on to chat about the weather and the Rosh Hashanah services, opining that the family only, quote, eats good when she's home. He adds, quote, I still think you are one of the prettiest freshmen I've seen at Washington. With this situation, I would expect you to have plenty of dates and to be the belle of the sorority you choose. With all the love that is in me, I wish you the happiest year of your life in college. Looking forward to seeing you in October. Please give us a few hours of your weekend. I'm sure Richard will approve. Write whenever possible, with heart-filled devotion, sincerely, Dad. P.S. I like receiving personal letters. Momo, I know you didn't believe it, but you were so loved by every single person sitting in these at least first 2 rows. And for the people in the back, if you didn't love her, you've loved somebody that she loved, and that is enough for me. It wasn't always easy to love you, and I wish I had told you more sincerely when you were alive. But a sense of bitterness and resentment overtook me too. That's transitioned to some regret as I've looked through photos and letters over the last few days. I've been reminded of the grandmother who took me on countless shopping trips to Nordstrom, introduced me to my love of theater, Johnny Cash, Denny's, kept my secret when I crashed into her brand new Lexus, and supported me in every which way, including gifting me acne cream when I was really going through it as a teen. You were bedridden for years, but you are all around me now. In the grass I lay on in my backyard when I need a moment's rest, in the trees that rustle gently in the summer breeze. You're no longer trapped by your physical or psychological limitations. You are back, contributing to the beauty and love that this planet provides. So for now, I'll tell the flowers how much I loved having you as my grandmother, and with my hands in the dirt, I'll feel the gratitude of ever having you in my life at all. I miss you so very much, but I'm so happy you finally have a chance to rest in everlasting peace. And as she would say to me after we hung up the phone, or before we hung up the phone, I love you more.
Now I'm going to call up Sam, one of her other grandchildren, to say some words.
Hi, everybody. If I haven't met you yet, hi, I'm Sam, Merle's grandson. I didn't really know where to start with this. Momo, as we knew her, was in many ways a constant in my life. it's hard to lose a constant. Some of my earliest memories are of running around in her apartment downtown, which I thought was the coolest place ever. She lived up in a high-rise. She had a view of the lake if you stood in her kitchen and kind of squinted between a couple of buildings. I remember all of the holidays we had there. Hanukkahs with mountains of presents and latkes and Pesach seders that the adults tried really hard to finish while the kids ran off. I remember how excited Momo was when we got there and how she tried to make the holiday special for everyone. She put love and thought into all of it and to all of us. In that time between those holidays, I was fortunate to spend a lot of time with her as a kid. When I was really little, she'd call us at home and pretend to be different characters from Sesame Street or Barney, which was my favorite at the time. And I know I figured out it was her at some point, but she kept it going for a while anyway. When I got a little older, she introduced me to a lot of theater and literature, which I didn't realize until later how much really stuck with me. I think about it a lot. She took everyone in the family to shows and to Shakespeare, but I always felt like our trips were special. We'd talk in the car on the way and there and back down to Navy Pier, and we teach each other about what was hip in our day and sharing stories about school and making up reasons why the other drivers on the road were so terrible. She used to tell me about this idea she had for a hood-mounted paintball gun that she would use to tag bad drivers' cars. And then she'd call the police and tell them to look out for the person with the paintball. I think about it a lot. It's a great idea. I always felt like her and I had a lot in common. We were both introverted, independent, and bookish. Once I could read and knew enough words, we'd start playing Scrabble together. She beat me every time by a lot. But I appreciated that because she treated me like another person and not just another 7-year-old. And I started closing the gap. We were eventually a little more evenly matched by the time I left for college. Somewhere around then, we got into Wars with Friends so we could keep in touch, which may, I think, have been her main motivation for learning to use an iPhone. I finally had an edge on that, but not much of one. As with most fads, that game died out as we all went on with our lives, but she kept her love of playing games going. She had a little bit of an obsession with these point-and-click scavenger hunt games. Enough to, at some point, she brought me to CDW to help her pick out a computer specifically for playing those games. I helped her set it up in her office, which, of course, means I became her de facto IT support for several years and several computers. I was always amazed by how much malware she was able to acquire. At one point while I was in college, I wasn't available. She called the Geek Squad, and they took a look and called her PC beyond saving. I think that's when she switched to an iPad. But those tech support calls gave us an opportunity to connect, even as I got older and I moved away. And I don't think I realized how important that was at the time. Momo wasn't the perfect grandmother. You've heard all kinds of stories, and I don't honestly know if such a thing as a perfect grandmother exists. But I didn't know any different growing up. She was just Momo. She had her share of problems inside and out, just like all of us. But even until the end, she kept going. Thank you, Momo, for teaching me how to persevere when life feels too overwhelming. I wouldn't be where I am today if you hadn't been a part of my life. So even with all of life's ups and downs, I wouldn't change a thing. And I wish I had known to tell her that before today. And I hope that wherever she is now, she hears this. Thank you, Momo. We all miss you.
Thanks to the family for such beautiful, heartfelt reflections. Just yesterday, we completed the book of Vayikra, Leviticus. During the final verse, we stood and we recited Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. Be strong, and through it let us all be strengthened. And further, the completion of this book happened during the time period we mark now, known as the counting of the Omer, during which we recite a blessing each day between the holiday of Passover and Shavuot, to make sure that we are thankful to God for the daily bounty of the season, and to help us formulate gratitude for all of God's blessings, great and small. Today we come to mark the closing of the book of Merle Friedman's life. Just as we did for completing a book of the Torah, we are now to reflect on her life, to honor her life, and to celebrate it. And as the tradition of the counting of the Omer teaches, we're to be thankful for all the good things Merle provided for us in life, and also to thank God for whatever blessings she received, be they large or small. And as you heard, one of her greatest blessings was the love of her family, which she treasured and which she received in so many ways as they supported her unbelievably throughout her life. It was her family that sustained her, and being with them, cooking for them, giving them gifts, spending time with them, that was what brought her the greatest happiness. Thus, it's my very sad honor to express my condolences and those of our synagogue at North Suburban Bethel to her family, to her loving children, to Michelle and Brian, and to Marla, and to Terry, and to her adored grandchildren, to Sam and Jessica and Tristan and Emily and Daniel and Hannah, to her cherished great-grandchild Vera, and to her beloved sister Barbara and her husband Jeff. And to all her dear friends and family, my prayer is simple, that the words we share today and the traditions we observe provide you some measure of comfort at a difficult time. Merle was born in Chicago in 1943 and was the first child of her parents. Her daughter shared with me that her mom would recall fondly going with her own mother all dressed up in proper dresses and jewelry to the department stores to shop, as was the custom of the time. She talked about poodle skirts, her high school sorority at Niles West, and a day camp that she loved to attend. It all sounded lovely. She did well in school and was accepted, as you heard, to Washington University. In 1963, she was married and decided at the time to leave university to focus on family life. Michelle was born in St. Louis, and then the family moved to Lincolnwood, and Marla was born here in Chicago. Yet she never gave up on her studies, as she was smart and she liked to learn. And as you heard, she went back to school later in life and graduated from Mundelein College and got her MSW from Loyola. She worked for Jewish Child and Family Services as well as private practice, helping people with various needs. We should all be proud that she chose a profession that assisted others and that she touched the lives of many through her profession. As most of you know, Merle had a tough life in many ways, but she too was tough. Somehow, she persisted through so many illnesses, issues, and procedures, and she continued to make her life for herself, despite many limitations and living on her own for much of her adult life. She had a desire to live, and what she lived for was her family. While she was definitely a tough mother that didn't mince words and had a certain way of doing things, she deeply cared for her daughters and taught them many things, as you already heard from Marla. As Marla said, her love language was typically food and buying gifts. She taught Marla and Michelle how to cook and insisted, despite her struggles, on making knedlach, pies, and other food for each holiday or gathering, even if it did arrive a little late now and then. One time I was told she made 8 different pies for one meal. I wish I had been invited to that one. And she loved, loved, loved spending time with her grandchildren. She would make food for them, and she would shower them with gifts. As you heard, Hanukkah at Momo's, their term of affection for her was always a scene where there would be so many gifts for each child that the family could barely fit themselves and their gifts in their minivans to head home after Hanukkah. She also used to do silly and fun things, as you heard, like call them as their favorite TV characters, even though I was told that she wasn't so great at doing the voices. She also instilled in her children and grandchildren a love for theater, as you heard. She took them all to various shows and musicals, and some even accompanied her to Stratford for the Shakespeare Festival each year. Marlis told me that she's now a Broadway geek because of her. As you also heard, she loved the Chicago Bears and instilled a love of Chicago sports in her daughters and grandchildren. She would sit with them during the games and express her passion for the Bears. She had a number of other hobbies as well, including gardening, crossword puzzles, which she was very good at, and as you heard, Scrabble. She even played Words with Friends when that came out, though technology was not her thing. And as the family showed me, her text messages were often completely unreadable and full of random emojis. And she never quite figured out how to properly take pictures with her iPhone's camera. So there was that. And she loved reading, especially mysteries, as Marla said. And if she loved a book, she would buy each person in the family a copy because she wanted them to love it too. Though she wouldn't consider herself religious, Merle was a proud Jew. She loved Israel. She traveled there on several occasions. She always had a chamsa and a ton of Jewish Judaica in her home. As you heard, she loved Jewish cooking, making her dishes from scratch, including gefilte fish, kreplach, knedelach, and strudel. Anytime you have ach at the end, you know it's Jewish food. And she cherished celebrating Jewish traditions and holidays very, very much. Thus, as we say when we finish a book of the Torah, chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. Let the memories of the life of Merle Friedman strengthen us as we honor her life in the way we live our own. Ti zichra brucha, may the memory of Mirza Chana, Bat Feivel Vanessa, always be for a blessing. And let us all please say, Amen. Now I'm going to call the Chazan back, and I'll ask you to please stand if you're able to, so we can recite the memorial prayer.
El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bameromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanefei HaShekhinah B'ma'alot Kedoshim Kedoshim Utehorim Kizohar Rakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Mirza Chana Bat Feivel Vanessa Shehalcha Le'olama Began Eden Tehei Menuchata Ana Baal Harachamim Hasdirea B'seite Knafecha Le'olamim Utzror Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Mirza Chana by Feivel Vanessa, Merle Friedman, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that a loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May your soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. May you always rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated.
Friends, this concludes the services here in the chapel. The interment and burial services will continue in the grounds of the cemetery. When we leave this space, not yet, just as a little forewarning, we'll be asking the pallbearers to escort the casket first, and then we'll invite everyone, if you're able to walk, it's just on the section just across from where this building is, so everyone can walk there. If you need or have any other mobility challenges, you can certainly also drive just around the corner. The hearse will be bringing the casket to the grave, and then we'll all reconvene next to the hearse to bring the casket to the grave. The family will be together at the Grossberg residence at 1651 St. John's Avenue in Highland Park, and they'll be together today upon return from the cemetery until 9 p.m., continuing Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 6:30 until 9 p.m.
Minions at 7:30.
Minyan is each evening at 7:30. And for those of you that'll be joining the family at Shiva, we would encourage you to utilize the nearby public parking lots for your vehicles. The family has also requested that any memorial contributions be made to either North Suburban Synagogue Beth El or to Hadassah Midwest, and that information is available in the service folders that you should have received when you came into the space today. If not, we do have those for you as you leave. For those of you joining us online, that information is also available on our website. The following individuals have been asked to serve as pallbearers: Brian Rubin, Sam Rubin, Jessica Rubin, Tristan Rubin, Terry Grossberg, Daniel Grossberg, Emily Grossberg, and Jeff Richardson. At this time, I would ask everyone to please rise and stand in place as we escort the casket, the family, and the clergy from the chapel. And pallbearers, you're going to line up close to me and follow behind our staff as we bring the casket out.
יושב בסתר יום, בצל שדי יתלונן, ומעלה לא נמאסי מצודתי אליי.